My name is Chloe Friedman, and I'm a public relations and communications professional. I may not have all the answers, but I'm willing to find them out with you. I'll help you communicate with yourself and others to find your goals and reach your dreams. I'm an expert in organization and prioritization. Visit winggirlpr.com for more information and follow me on Instagram at winggirlpr. Now, take the journey and find your wings. Good afternoon. So it is Sunday afternoon here, and it's quite a sunny day. I just spent literally 6 hours working on a paper for school. This is my last class of my master's in business administration. I sat down at the computer today at 9:30, and it was 5 or 6 hours later by the time I finished. So while I was working on that, and over the past couple days, I've been mulling over the topic of this episode that I wanted to record for you. And I'm so thankful I have so many great friends to brainstorm with and talk to, and they help me come up with ideas all the time. Whether we mean to or not, it just kind of comes up in conversation. A lot of times when I used to write a lot of songs, I would get most of my topics just purely by hearing out other people, listening to them, sharing those types of stories that we'd have in song. And so this is stemming from a conversation I had with a friend, and we were just kind of talking about all the changes right now with COVID-19 and the world and what's going on with our jobs, and do we like this time? Do we not like this time? And one thing that came out of that conversation was toxicity and toxic environments. And so that birthed the topic for today of toxic environment, fight or flight. When to run and when to put on your adult pants and just deal with it. And so when I think of toxicity, there's so many things it can apply to. It can apply to your workplace, to people. So mostly I want to talk about it in the aspect of professional organizations. That's the nature of a lot of what I talk about, but everything is so universal, these topics, and a lot of things I'm going to talk about, they apply to our relationships, to family, to people in our lives, not just about the workplace. So over the last few days, I've been thinking about how to approach this topic because it's a tough one. And I think that what it came down to is, what is a toxic environment? And to me, a toxic environment is one that goes against your core values. So something we're hearing a lot right now with the COVID-19 pandemic is how you're treated and how your company treats you during this time. It says a lot. So one perspective that a lot of people have, and I agree with, is that you're a customer at your own workplace too. So a lot of companies are advertising or putting out really emotional videos about their mission and their values and how they're there for their customers. But equally important is not only being there for your customers, but being there for your employees. So it does speak volumes, and especially in a crisis, I think people either panic or they react with calmness and move forward with strength, and depending on the direction they go, it impacts your life. And it is a big learning experience about yourself, about who you're involved with, about the company you work for, and what your future will look like. So I also think that this has to do with a lot about how we're treated in general, like I said, by people in relationships, friendships, families. And in this COVID-19 pandemic, I know I keep coming back to that, but it is just incredibly eye-opening. It's a time to detox from the toxic. And we're so blessed to be able to use this time to really distinguish what is toxic and what's not in our lives. And I think the best way to know what's toxic and what's not is simply, how do you feel without that thing? How do you feel without that job? How do you feel not seeing that person? I think it's the best way to know. And time away makes you either miss something or not. And usually it's not so black and white. When we're together all the time and you're not working from home due to a health crisis and you're seeing these people every day and you're engaging with an organization or a job that you work for or a place, you become so immersed in it that you cannot see or feel clearly black and white. But this time and this space that we've been blessed with, it's making it very easy to distinguish. So when it comes to a toxic work environment, it's not the work place, it's not the work itself that makes the environment. It is created by the people. The environment is created by the people. So if you're lucky, you will work for a company whose mission and values reflect your own. And that company is focused on, and they know that they need to hire people who reflect their mission and their values. So I think a place to start is defining your own personal values and then defining that of which you're trying to decide, do I want this in my life or do I not? So in the example of a new job you want to apply for, you would first want to identify or see if you can identify that company's mission or values, and then say to yourself, does that match my own personal values? And so do you have personal values already, or do you need to create them? My values are as follows. I want to share them with you guys. And this was a really great exercise for me because I have never sat and written down my values before. I think internally I know them and I know what makes me feel good or bad, or what motivates me or what does not, but I have never sat and actually put them to paper. So I want to share a few that I came up with, and they're not right or wrong. They're just what I personally need and what I believe, and yours could look very similar or they could look very different. So the first is respect, and that's not just from others, but to others. So being able to have mutual respect. Honesty and transparency is very important to me. I'd much rather someone be honest with me than lie to me if they're scared to hurt my feelings. I think it comes back to bite you. Another very important one to me is service to others, positive and mission focused. So I know that I need to feel like I'm doing good for humanity and doing good for the world. And in turn, if I do feel that way, I'm very motivated to do a good job, be a good significant other, be a good friend. A manager who trusts and gives me responsibility. A place where I can self-manage and not be micromanaged. I've learned that about myself the hard way. I've been in experiences where I kept feeling dissonance and I said, why? But I realized that when I have a little bit of room to breathe, I can really be creative and come up with some of my best work, but also allow for guidance from a direct manager. I appreciate and need and value efficiency and knowledge. I want to learn from others. I want to become better. A place that gives credit and kudos. And the next two really overlap so much with personal relationships too, but a 50-50, both putting in effort and someone or a place that seeks to understand. So I want to be understood. I want to understand others, and that mutual understanding which leads to respect as well. So today I want to challenge you to do what I did. Get out your phone, get your notes out, get out a pen and pad. Think about some of these values that are important to you, your personal values, and write them down. My Instagram is at winggirlpr, and I'm going to make a post about this topic. And I would love for you, after you do this exercise, to share with me in my DM or on the comments, what are some of the values that you all came up with. I'm very curious what overlap we have as far as similarities go, and would love to see some other ideas. I think that we probably all have more values than we even know, and seeing each other's really will help open up our mindset and realize, wow, yes, I agree with that. I need that too. Or no, that's not something that I necessarily need, but I totally respect that that's what you need. So I want to share a funny story with you that goes along with mission and values in the workplace. About a year or two ago, I ran into someone from my past. I knew this person from a previous job, and at the time in the past when I knew them, I had just left a job, and so I was looking for the next right fit opportunity. They messaged me and said, would you be interested in coming to work for us? And that's really all I remembered about it. That is such a blur in my life. I was going through so many turning points and decisions. I remember I ultimately kindly declined. I wanted to do a little bit of a different route, but I ran into them years later. And so I'm at a brewery and we're talking, and they say to me, do you remember what you said to me when I messaged you and offered you about a job? And I said, no, I don't remember. And they said, you asked me, what is your mission and what are your values? And they said, I didn't know what they were. And that's probably why you didn't come to work for me. And keep in mind, this was the context of a communications and digital marketing related job. So it's really hard to market a company that does not have clearly defined mission and values. And yes, that is something that a marketer can absolutely help develop. But I think it's so important in the story of an organization to go in knowing what those values are, because again, you need to make sure that yours align. And I can't market or believe in something that doesn't personally align or connect at all to me. And the same goes with a relationship. You don't get into a relationship not knowing the person and not knowing some of their beliefs and their values. It's truly a two-way road. You need to know your own values and you need to know theirs. So in the process of getting to know someone or interviewing, you not just want to get a feel for the job, but you want to get a feel for the people and the why. I think the why of everything is so important. Since I was a kid, I've always wanted to understand the why of everything. I'm sure people get sick of me asking why all the time, but it's because I want to understand the motives. And I think that asking why and understanding that why is a really good way to judge good from bad and understand why something is the way it is. It's the story of how it happened, why it happened, how did you get to where you are today? Does that why match up with your internal why and your purpose and your beliefs? Now, not everything is always going to match up. And that's the thing. So you have to realize that even if your values are the same, everybody is obviously very different and we're all going to have personality difference. So I do think a shared mission and value makes it much easier to see eye to eye and work with different personalities. from the relationship standpoint or the business organizational standpoint or family standpoint. But at the end of the day, if you're working toward the same thing, it creates this commonality and this bond. And even if you have major personality differences, those shared values help you build that relationship and that respect and that mutual understanding of one another. So something I have done, which I've become very interested in, was the Predictive Index personality test. It's similar to Myers-Briggs. It's just the way that you're tested and the results show some different things, but in a sense, it gives you a sense of self-concept, what others think of you, how others interpret you, how you interpret yourself, and allows you to better understand yourself. And then you can compare it with others, see how you compare to other personality types. How are you best managed? What are your tendencies? So when I got hired at my current organization about almost 4 years ago now, I did this personality test before I even started. And when I started, I said, "Can I see my bosses, please?" And finally, I was able to see everyone's that I work with very closely, any direct reports I now have. And it's been super neat to read them and see our similarities, see our differences. I learned so much about myself too, what my tendencies are, because you think your tendencies are one thing, but when you really get tested on them scientifically, could be totally different. So I want to share some of my strongest personality explanations, behaviors, I guess you would call it, because it's pretty interesting. And I don't know if the Predictive Index, I think you can maybe try some free tools online, but there are tons and tons of fun resources to just go learn more about yourself. So I want to challenge you to do that as well, and do it with a friend. Compare your answers and see why you work well on some things or maybe why you don't agree on others. It's super interesting to do with spouses, with friendships. It's really a fun activity. So when I took the Predictive Index test, it came back with these pointers that said these are some of my strongest personality suits and behaviors. So the first was that I'm driven and I protect against risk. The second is I'm cautious, which that came as no surprise. I'm very cautious my whole life, but it elaborated on that. And cautiousness sometimes in our society is viewed as a negative thing. You know, someone who's not a risk taker or someone who's not willing to just drop everything and go, like, "Oh, you're not fun. You're just not going to jump up and book a flight to Bora Bora or whatever." But cautiousness in this sense, it showed me that I'm cautious because I follow a plan to avoid making mistakes. So yes, sometimes in personal life, I want to be less cautious and learn to be with others who might balance that out. But from an organizational standpoint, that's a really great skill to have because you can work with limited mistakes. It told me that I'm detail-oriented and accommodating. I'm careful with rules by the book, very fast-paced and literal in interpreting rules. And so if I know that I'm that way, I can use that to clarify when people give me instruction. It told me that I'm driven to achieve operational efficiencies and very impatient with routines. So that was interesting to read, and it actually goes on to describe more in detail about all of those things and all of your tendencies. And then it tells you, if you want, you can compare to others. You say, how do I work with my manager? How do they best manage me? How do I best manage others? So it's really, really, really interesting and helps bring new perspective to the way you know yourself and you view yourself and, again, your own personal values. So I think all topics I talk about seem to relate and come back to knowing yourself so that you can then learn about others and understand why you act the way you do. Self-awareness is very important in monitoring any situation. Now, with all that being said, I do want to make a statement that regardless of personality differences and values, physical or mental abuse should never, ever, ever be tolerated. So I do want to state that if you need help with an emotional crisis, there is a crisis counselor text line. You can text the word HOME, HOME, to 741 741. And there's also a domestic violence hotline, which is 24/7, and that's 1-800-799-SAFE, which is 7233. So that's 1-800-799-7233. So just because you realize that you might have personality differences or personal value differences from one person to another doesn't mean that you can make excuses for someone's behavior if they are treating you in a way that is hurting you emotionally or physically. So with that being said, I want to talk about now assessing your values. So if you have to, if you're like me and you enjoy seeing the differences on paper, make a table of your organization's value and mission, and then list your personal values and mission. So this can also be done basically for anything you're trying to decide. Do I want this in my life? Do I not? Do I fight or flight? Do I deal with it or do I get the hell out? So again, I always relate everything back in my podcast to the organizational standpoint, but it's so applicable on so many levels, and it's definitely a universal topic here. So if you're making this table, you want to take your values and mission, compare them to your organization's values and mission, and then you ask yourself, well, how many match up? So another way to do this too is take it a step further. Not only write those facts of what are the values and the missions, but write how you feel. So how do I feel when I'm at that place? Or how do I think I would feel if I'm a part of that place or organization? How do I feel when I'm with that person? Do I want to date this person? How do they make me feel? Do I think they'd make me feel this way or happy on a long term? So then write down how you feel with them and write down how you feel without them. Same goes for that job you're applying for or that job you're in now. How do you feel with them, and how do you or would you feel without them? Are there more positive words on one column than the other? And then you can use that to guide you in your decision of your fight or your flight. So again, not everything is going to match up perfectly, and that's okay. We're human. We wouldn't have friendships if we were all exactly the same. You sometimes are attracted to people who are much different than you, who can teach you things, who balance you. Same goes with an organization. You want to be able to learn and become better and grow. So if we all were attracted to things that were exactly the same, we'd never get better. We would never grow. So it is so important in all of this to respect differences and realize that we have differences. So a few ways that you can respect differences, which I want to share with you that I brainstormed this morning, were to show interest in the feelings and beliefs of others. So you don't have to agree with those feelings. You don't have to understand them. You don't have to believe them. But if you care about that person or that organization or whatever it is, you show interest and show them that you care. Again, treat them with respect. It's a mutual respect. You treat others the way you want to be treated. Isn't that the golden rule? You don't have to agree to understand. Remember, a lot of this is just an opinion. It doesn't make it right or wrong. And try to find something similar in that person or in that organization and compare it to your own life. This will allow you to empathize and understand what's going on or what that person is going through. So in my graduate studies, I actually took a class that talked about many of these topics, and it was actually a statistics class, but the way we focused was how applying all of that to the real world from the perspective of managers. So we talked a lot from the organizational standpoint about leader-member exchange and job satisfaction and organizational commitment. So I want to share some of what we talked about. It's interesting how much it relates to this whole conversation. And I thought back, and I actually, thank goodness, saved this file, my essay, and I went back and I read through it and pulled out a couple pointers. But one thing we talked about was leader-member exchange. And again, when you're thinking about this, if you're not in the type of environment where you have a direct manager, or maybe you are self-managed, so your work looks a lot different, this is all universal concepts. And leader-member exchange, it can be applicable to anyone, to a mom or a dad, how you interact with your brother or sister, with friends. So a couple things with leader-member exchange. And my stomach is growling so loud right now. I hope that you can't hear it on this recording, but I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep going. Leader-member exchange. So do you know where you stand with that person? Would they help you solve problems? Do they understand your needs? Do they recognize your potential? Would you defend them? And vice versa, would they defend you? So, like I said, those are universal topics and probably something that you'd want to think about in any relationship, whether it's a workplace environment or a personal relationship. So then you want to look at job satisfaction, and a few ways to measure that are how do you personally feel about your job? Do you think of quitting a lot? Do you feel that your job is secure? Does it allow for personal growth? Pay and benefits, think about those things, which when I measured this on a survey, those were always the rankings that were low. But remember, not everything has to be monetary. There's a lot of non-monetary items that bring so much value and happiness to a job. So remember to weigh those accordingly. Quality of supervision. Do you have independent thought? Are you helping other people? Do you get the support and the guidance you need? All great questions to consider when you're considering staying somewhere or taking on a new opportunity. And finally, organizational commitment. Do you talk the organization up to your friends? Would you literally accept any job assignment just to stay there? Do you have pride for that workplace? Are your values shared or similar? Are you inspired to do your best work? And so for me, I've realized now that I'm inspired to do my best work when I feel comfortable around my coworkers. I feel comfortable to express ideas, and whether they go anywhere or not, or maybe they're silly, but I still feel that I can bounce them and brainstorm. And when I love the people I'm with, and when I am doing something for the greater good, I am inspired and motivated, and I enjoy my workplace. So again, thinking about a lot of these questions also can help if you're unsure about putting your values down to paper. Thinking through these questions can help define your personal values. So in my next episode, so much of this has come down to relationships, and I want to talk about the tribe, finding your tribe. And when we think of tribe, we usually think of our friend group, but we're just surrounded by so many things in our environment that impact our tribe. And our tribe isn't just our friends, it's our work family, it's our family, it's everyone from our hairdresser to the person you see getting the mail every day, the people you surround yourself with. And I look forward to talking about that more, but I hope you got some good takeaways from this today. If you're facing a big decision, I want you to just take time, use this time during COVID-19 when we're all slowed down a little bit. And maybe, you're working from home, or you're still going into your work, or without a job, and whatever you're doing and facing that next move and that next decision, use some of these tools to help guide it. And again, I just want to reiterate, it all comes down to knowing yourself, knowing your values, and defining those values. If you are having trouble putting them to paper, ask others. Sometimes it is your tribe or your friend group or family or significant other that know you best, and they can just say, oh, well, I've heard you talk about this, and I know that this is important to you. So asking others and kind of surveying them on what they think can help you form your opinions of yourself too. And sometimes you have to take things with a grain of salt, and sometimes you really have to take them to heart. But, what you believe, and go with your gut. And if someone says something that makes sense and you agree, then yes, that is your value. So put those to paper. I challenge you today to take this time and think about them, and think about the way that our values affect each other. Remember, it's all about mutual respect. Ask someone what their values are and what their mission is, and look at others, mirror others. If someone is happy in their situation, in their organization, ask them why. Ask them what makes them happy, and then seek that out. If you're looking for a job, say, well, these things make my friend happy and I agree with them. So these are questions I might want to ask in an interview, or questions I can make sure I can read about on their website. You can do your research because they're doing your research on you. So again, thank you so much for listening. I am so excited to share this new episode with you, and I look forward to next week talking about the tribe. Thank you all. Bye-bye.